Okay. First time with StreamYard. So if you guys can hear me, if you can see me, let me know in the comments so I know this is working. We already have quite a few questions from David Rock. I love it. Very nice. I'll let someone confirm before I start answering these questions. Okay. Interesting. I'm not seeing confirmation. I need somebody to confirm that you can hear me, you can see me. Let me pull up YouTube. See what's going on. It's not what I wanted, actually. Studio. Content. Live. Okay, it says I'm live. Let's go to the channel. Well, it looks like it's working then. Thanks, nobody, for confirming. But okay. So let's jump right into this then. Again, this is first time on StreamYard, so I'm trying to figure this out. But this should provide a much better experience. I'll be able to share my screen, share my audio, do this, show comments. That's pretty cool. I always wanted to do that. So yeah, this will be really good. For those of you who are catching the replay, we're here every week, Sunday, 11:30 California time. So don't miss the next one. So first from David Rock here. How do you say I'd wash my hands, I'd do the dishes, I'd binge watch the show, I'd take a walk, I'd have some coffee? And then continuing from that, it seems like there are different ways to pronounce the apostrophe D sound depending on the letter that comes after it. Okay, so good question. So we'll bring this one back up here. Now, number one, I always want to emphasize this, right? So you put depending on the letter that comes after it. The letter that comes after it has no effect on sound. The sound that comes after it will have an effect. Okay. Remember, we don't want to confuse letters and sounds. They're two different things. A letter is a visual representation, and especially if we're talking about English spelling, we know that it doesn't always match the sound. So just a little clarification, repetition, or reminder there. But yeah, so this is like delinking, basically, right? Not delinking as but like the sound D, linking with the sound D. So I'd wash. You can get a little weak release D, or you could do I'd wash. It's kind of hard to stop it there because the W wants to overlap. So we're probably just going to go like do, just small. I'd wash. That's fine, right? Because the W likes to overlap with everything else. You can do them at the same time. So same thing if I say on wash, I'm in the W, but I haven't released the N yet. On wash. Very common. So that's the case of the W. It's just how the W works. I do. Hold it for a second, then release it. I do. Okay. If you say I do with just one regular D, it sounds like I do with no apostrophe. If you're speaking quickly, you can still do that, but it may not be clear. You need to clear context. I'd binge. So here we're going, you could do a held D into a B. You could potentially release the D. It's probably the least likely. I'd binge. It's fine. But here we can also shift, right? Because the t, d, n can shift into p, b, m if the next sound is a p, b, m. So you can say, I binge watch the show. And you hold it again, just like you would do with I do. I binge. So now it's like a held B and a regular B. I binge watch the show. It can be a little bit unclear, especially if you're speaking more clearly, more slowly. So then it's probably more likely to actually do a quick little held D before you close the lips. That one's a little bit of a trick. There's kind of a little range to it. I'd take, same thing as I do, except the next sound is a T instead of a D. So you have to devoice it. I'd take. I'd have, Okay. Here you can actually, we very commonly just cancel out the H. I'd have, I'd have. You can flap the D into the vowel. I'd have, I'd have. Hello, Abdullah. Welcome. Or you can say I'd have, I'd have, I'd have. Remember, there's a range of pronunciation, especially with the stop sounds at the end. So yeah, it depends, and that's just right. Right. You said it seems like there are different ways to pronounce. It's not that it seems; it's that there are, but it's not anything. It's not like the D. The D usually won't become something special. It's just depending on what's after it. You can blend with stuff like D and Y can maybe become J, right? But in general, it's either going to be a stopped or a held D, okay, or it might be a little weak release. It does depend on the next sound, and in general, we're going to go for the thing that allows us to speak the easiest while still being clear enough. And you kind of have to navigate what that is and get used to that. Okay, what's the difference between because and in that? I need more context. Those are two completely different things. So when I think of because, I don't think of in that. So I'd have to have like an actual context and compare the two. Okay, when I pronounce short E sound, the short E sound, which again, use the terms you want, not short E. It's not short. Okay. It's not short. It's the sound. Okay. Is E is E. Simple as that. Okay. They're two completely different sounds. They have nothing to do with each other. I need mark timestamps. Times. Okay, good. I can't forget the timestamps this week, which also I have a bit of news for those of you who haven't seen yet. See 7 minutes. E. Okay. Anyway, so when I pronounce the back of my tongue stretches and touches the upper teeth. What? Oh, okay. You missed me out on the sides. And the middle of the tongue pushes forward towards the roof, right? So one thing that you guys have to understand about the exact articulation of sounds, there's more than one way to produce some of these sounds. Like the sound, I can produce it in multiple ways. It doesn't have to be an exact shape necessarily. What I am finding more and more to be the most important key determining factor is the mouth posture. I'm always going to go back to mouth posture because the more that I work with it, the more that I see results from people, the more I'm convinced that the mouth posture is the secret weapon. It's the silver bullet. It's the thing that's going to give you the accent. Now that being said, of course, like, okay, I have my mouth posture. If I say like, like that's not a sound in English, right? So you do still have to form the sounds. But when I do you can kind of see it's generally pretty flat. I mean, there's a little bit of a shape to it, kind of, but it's overall pretty flat. Now, you look on some of these online resources because I've seen them too, where it looks like sort of the tongue kind of does this, I guess, and that works too. Eh, 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 creates a slightly different sound, but as long as it doesn't get close enough to the boundary with another sound, then a native speaker is going to interpret it as that sound. Okay. So if you're within range for one particular sound and you have the right posture, which means the right center of gravity, you're open back here for American English, more relaxed, you're not holding up this up higher. If all that's in place and you're within range for that particular sound, meaning say you're in range for you're not too close to right? Which is a common problem, then you're going to sound, it's almost guaranteed you're going to sound great. Okay. Also keep in mind, remember, there's the fully enunciated, fully articulated version of a sound, and there's the lazier version. And there's a range of that from fully articulated to lazy. And it doesn't particularly matter usually, but the biggest determining factor is usually if we are clearly enunciating or we're speaking more slowly, we're emphasizing, we're going to tend to use the more clearly enunciated version of a particular sound. So if I say that is a good idea, but if I just say, yeah, that's a good idea, that, you don't have to do to say okay? It's a lazy that. But if I say that's a good idea, okay, I have a reason to emphasize, I have a reason to make it bigger and clearer. This is how English works. It's dynamic. Okay, anyway, so based on your description, it sounds like that could produce the proper sound, yes, but I would worry less about what should I do with my tongue, because you have the answer. Maybe you can't hear it and you need to get feedback, but you have the answer. If you do it that way and the sound that you produces sounds like congratulations, you got it. If you're doing that and it doesn't sound like maybe you have the general thing right, but you're missing the posture. Maybe you're just a little out of place. Maybe, who knows, there could be some little detail. Maybe you're not completely wrong. So don't necessarily throw the whole thing out if it doesn't sound quite right. In fact, the mouth posture is probably going to be the missing piece anyway. But regardless of whatever it is, if it sounds right, it sounds right. I don't care how you do it as long as it sounds right. That's the whole thing. So if you want to double check, right, you can find a tutor, paid or free language exchange partner, somebody that can give you some feedback. If you want, you can maybe send a recording to my email. I can't do that for everybody all the time, but here and there, especially since I'm still pretty small, I can check your sound. If you want, just send it to my email address. Okay, so moving on. Another question from David Rock. I heard some natives say when pronouncing the long oo, again, long and short nonsense. Okay, oo is oo. I think the short oo is supposed to be the like in book, if I remember right, something like that. Or maybe it's the upside down V. I don't know, but it's a bunch of nonsense. Oo is oo. Okay, it's the oo sound. It's not the long oo. It's the oo sound. The tip of the tongue kind of curls up and doesn't touch the back of the bottom teeth. Is it another way to produce a long oo sound? So what the tip of your tongue does for most sounds does not matter. It does not matter. Okay, does not matter. For example, so I can anchor my tongue right here. Okay, I can anchor it right there, and I can pronounce pretty much every single vowel sound. E, o, oo. My tongue is right there. It's not moving. Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh. Tip of my tongue is not moving. Okay. Is maybe a bit of an exception. It is technically possible after I played with it more, but it's kind of hard to keep it there. It wants to kind of pull back again. And then with the many teachers teach the retroflex where the tip is pointed up. And I get many students that they're like, oh, I can't do that. I'm not sure. And it's like, well, you don't have to. It doesn't matter if the tip is this, or this. The sound is here in the middle of the tongue. As long as you get that and you get it right and you have the right posture so that you have enough space back here, it's going to sound great. Okay. The tip does not affect the R sound. There's a small little difference, but it's so minute that a native speaker would never notice the difference. Okay. Anyway, so many times you can ignore the tip of the tongue when it comes to vowel sounds. Okay. Now on the other end of that, say eh. So I can anchor my tip here and say eh. I can have it up like this. Eh. I can have it more like this. Eh. I can see. Yeah. I can even have it maybe a bit like this, kind of hanging. Eh. Okay. You got to find where the sound actually is. Okay. And that takes experimenting, exploring, micro adjustments. Again, the posture, especially for certain sounds like if you don't have the posture right, you might have the sound right. Like Hindi has also, but it doesn't quite sound English. Sounds like it's recognizable as or say the schwa. The Russian schwa sounds like a schwa. Doesn't sound English. The British schwa sounds like a schwa. Doesn't quite sound American. Okay. The posture has a big effect on the quality of some sounds. For other sounds like E, it's not going to make too big of a difference because even between languages with varying different postures, the E already sounds very close anyway. But it will affect the exact final quality. So who cares what some natives do? Who cares? Can you produce the sound? Right? If lifting the tip of your tongue or not touching the back of the bottom teeth give you the right result, or if not curling the tongue or not or touching the bottom of the teeth or whatever it is you're doing, can you produce the ooh sound and make it sound good? Okay, great. You got your result. Who cares? Right? Now, of course, it is very important to know, like, okay, yeah, some natives do this, some natives do that, because say there's like the cot merger. Not all speakers of American English use the cot merger, although more and more so that is becoming the standard slowly over time. But regardless, if you use the cot merger or you don't, you're still generally going to sound neutral, right? So one of the English hacks that I give you is just use the cot merger, make your life easier. You just have one sound. If you like the sound of the accent, yes, it is an accent. It's neutral sounding, but it is an accent. If you like the accent of ah and ah instead of the accent of ah, the merger, then use that instead. It's your choice. You can do whatever you want. Or I learned a little while ago, apparently, the standard way that you're supposed to produce the dark L is you're touching the top. For both L's, you're supposed to be touching the top. And that was news to me because I'm a native speaker. I don't have a particular accent necessarily. I sound very generally neutral. And yet, when I produce the dark L, what I call the half L vowel, I pretty much never, ever touch the top. Right now, maybe if the next sound is a vowel and I'm linking and I sort of am turning it a bit more into a light L to link it, then maybe we'll do something like that. But if I just say all, you can see my tongue, all. I'm not saying all. Okay. Apparently, some natives, the standard, I guess, is to do this. Is there much of a difference in sound? Not really. Okay, as long as you have that back in place still, you can bring the tongue up, I guess. The way I originally taught it is like you don't touch, but apparently you can touch and still make a dark L. But even more, that's another hack because it's like, hey, can you do it without touching? That helps ensure that you're doing the right L. Okay, so who cares if some natives do it this way or if the standard way it's taught is that way? If you get the result you want, you can produce the sound you want. That's all that matters. Okay, another from David Rock. We're almost to Abdullah. Sorry, Abdullah. David just has so many questions, which is great. It's fine. Of course, I haven't been marking timestamps again. I'm going to mark a timestamp for that one. 17. So say after or before 1730. Before 1730. My job. Native range. I might clip that out. Okay, so next one. A native speaker says when pronouncing N sound, so the N sound, right? You could just write like this, right? Write N. Simple as that. Okay. You can put sound after it, right? But when pronouncing the N sound, that's fine. Such as hen, pen. See, because it's actually the same thing. The name of the letter is N, and we call it the N sound. Technically, it's the N sound, right? So I guess if you just wrote N, I guess, yeah, maybe that would be different. I don't know. See, in my brain, because for natives, N and N are tied together because the name of the letter is N. And so I actually got I got my wires crossed there. So you actually probably did it better. Good job. But when we do pronounce the name of the letter N, it is E plus N. So like hen minus the H or pen minus the P. Okay. So when we're pronouncing, what I would do there to make that clear, I think part of the reason why I got my wires crossed, we would probably say it like this. When pronouncing, I can't type. N. Now you don't necessarily have to capitalize it, but just say N, like without the sound. Okay. Of course, my transcription would be with a silent H, so I know that it's eh, which here it would probably be clear anyway. But Finn is here. Welcome, Finn. Because N is two sounds combined. So when you say sound, my mind went straight to O, just N. just n. And I crossed it. My wires got crossed with the name of the letter. Okay. Anyway, such as hen, pen. There's a subtle schwa sound in between. Is that true? Well, I'm going to tell you this. Okay, your mind is about to be blown. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter what sound you produce, no matter what sound you go from or to, at every given moment, listen very closely to how I'm speaking. Listen very closely, okay, to the way that I'm speaking. It's not always easy to hear, and you can hear it better at certain times than others based on certain transitions or certain sounds. The schwa sound, or the shadow, we could call it the shadow of the schwa sound, is present in every single thing that you do or say. Well, not do, but every single thing that you say. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. Hello?
Hey, Josh, are you busy?
Yes, I'm in my live stream.
Oh, would you mind if I stayed another night?
Yeah, just call me later.
Okay.
Okay, love you, bye. Whoosh. Difficulties. Okay. So moving on. What are we talking about? Yeah, there's always a schwa. That's the mouth posture. Okay. Now that does not mean that you're trying to say and at the same time, or and n at the same time. The mouth posture of American English and of many languages, but American English does it in a particular way. Every language, every dialect will probably do it slightly differently. But the core part of the mouth posture of American English is that is always present in everything that you produce. Okay. That's the center of gravity. I've talked about this in the mouth posture course. This is already available for you guys to watch. Now it's going to become a lot clearer once we start getting into phase 2, which here probably in the next week or two, I'm going to actually make the group 1 phase 2 lesson. It'll be the first lesson for phase 2. And you'll start to see what I mean. But for example, if I do, I say we do because we're talking about n here, right? Okay. So if I do an or if I do an n, or even if I do an h or I do a p, okay, the default relaxed position for an American speaker, which to us, it's relaxed. Okay, there is some tension here, some tension there to hold things into place in a particular shape. It's not completely relaxed, unlike what many teachers tell you. And I've already verified this as a fact. I have verified this as a fact. There are some things that you're probably going to have to relax compared to how you do it in your native language, especially up here. You want to sort of relax down and open a bit. But you also need to sort of build some muscle to hold it open. Okay. Especially for certain sounds, like if you go and do okay, now your throat might want to close up. You have to hold it open to hold that back posture, the back part of the posture. So there is some subtle tension, but it starts feeling relaxed, just like your native posture feels relaxed, even though it's completely different than American English. Okay, because that's what you've built. So to us, our relaxed, neutral, regular posture naturally results in okay. Now, what happens when we do any other sound? Okay, so if I do is up here. Okay, it's on the front of the tongue. We've already talked about like the exact shape and this and that. There's variation. Okay, fine. Resonance is a potential detail. Usually it's not a problem, but sometimes it is. So make sure it doesn't sound like it's coming from back here or anything like that. But as long as you have a good sound, okay, Now, what happens with the center of gravity? So we go Now, if I go from into listen. Now, what I feel, if I go there's this sort of center of gravity shape, this sound. Okay. Now, as I close into or as I shift forward into what happens with this? It's not that this completely disappears and now I'm in No, that would mean that there's no mouth posture. Okay. Sounds do not float in a void. Sounds do not float in a void. Okay. The mouth chart or the vowel chart is a really, really great tool, but it gives you the wrong impression. Fluent American is here. Yes, I did the thing. If you want to jump on, I'll let you do that in a second. I want to finish explaining this one point. So if you have some time, just hang around for a second. And otherwise, we can set something up later. There's no pressure for that. But yeah, things are pretty good. Going to be pushing hard, working my face off. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah. So vowel charts are great, but they don't tell you the exact shape. They don't tell you the exact tension. They don't tell you anything about mouth posture. They just kind of say, okay, E is higher in the mouth and it uses the front of the tongue. It doesn't really tell you about the jaw. Okay. Next week. Okay. Yeah, we'll set something up. I have another new email since I just launched my website. News to everybody. I just launched my website. So you can email me there or hit me up on Twitter or whatever. Just leave a comment on the YouTube video and however you want to do it. And we can figure out how to sort everything out. Yeah. Very good. So anyway, sorry for the interruption with that. Thank you. I used a template, so I didn't build everything from scratch, but I'm familiar with WordPress, so it was pretty easy. Anyway, sounds don't float in a void. Okay. So that little bit of that, right, we talk about it as a ball, like a ball in the mouth, helps give you that space. Of course, we need to be open and relaxed back here. Well, open and relaxed, right? It's definitely more open for sure, but it's lower. Okay. Then we get that center of gravity, ball shape here. Then what happens? We move into okay. This is going to shallow out, so it's going to disappear. As I said, you're not saying and at the same time. That's a mistake. But in a way, you kind of are. It's going to shallow out. You're going to feel that pressure, that central pressure where you build the sound. It's going to sort of shift forward because is up here. Okay. If it were it would shift backwards. Okay. And it's same thing with consonants, which we're going to talk about in a second. But if we go from to you can actually, it's really hard to feel. I have to pay very, very close attention, even as a native. If I'm not paying attention, I don't notice it. But I can feel it shift forward here. Now there's this little tiny, almost like a marble, little tiny, tiny, tiny ball of pressure still here, while I also feel the up here. So you have this, one person I'm working with likes to call it, I think, like a double pressure point or something like that, where you actually feel the center of gravity and the sound itself. Okay. And this is one reason why phase 0 is so important, because if you don't go through something like phase 0, or you don't just have a lot of experience playing with this type of stuff, you won't be able to feel things subtly enough. Okay. Phase 0 helps you start to be able to feel, oh, okay, yeah, I can see middle of my tongue is doing this, front of my tongue is doing this. So please go through phase 0. I don't care if it's boring. It's the most important work that you'll do in your entire life for your English accent. And even if you don't do mouth posture, it's the most important work you'll do. I can pretty much guarantee you that if you put in the work. But anyway, that aside, so there's still a little bit of that left, but it's not a fully formed That's why I say you're not doing them at the same time. Now, what happens if I try to do and I try to remove that mouth posture? So I don't have that little pressure there anymore. I kind of just let it be up here, and that's not there anymore. Let's see if I can do that. It's really hard to do for Some sounds it's easier to remove. I can't do it. It's probably not perfect, but it's you can already kind of tell if maybe you can. It's a small difference, but you maybe start to tell that it's kind of losing the sound. Like it still kind of sounds like but it's not quite sounding the same. It's not quite sounding right, because I'm sort of removing that center of gravity. Okay. So this is the secret sauce. This is the silver bullet, as I said. In N, okay, when you do N, you're not going to feel it as much because all the pressure ends up going through the nose. But if you do like a T, you should feel, right, we close up into T. Because remember, if your tongue is pushed forward, you're going to kind of touch the teeth. We don't want to touch the teeth. We want to be on the bump. So it's going to be pretty much straight up from that. Not push forward. Not okay. I know it's hard to see in my mouth, but you're going to go more or less straight up. The exact way that you close is important, but the main point here is that if you sort of build up the pressure for T but don't release it, you'll feel that little center of gravity pressure right there at the base of the front of the tongue. And so the center of gravity, because in American English, it happens to be in the center of the mouth. In Spanish, it's the sound. It's up here, and that colors everything, even the O. Okay, I've already verified that as well with my own exploration and talking to native speakers. So in American English, it happens to be here. In your language, it's not necessarily going to be in the center of the mouth. But because it is in the center of the mouth, it's always going to stay in the center. But when you go into, say, a sound that uses the front part of the tongue, it's going to shift forward. It's going to be very light and shift forward. When you use a sound that uses the back of the tongue, like ah or k or whatever, it's going to shift backwards. Okay. In the it's also still in the The kind of comes up like this more or less, and it's still right there. It helps keep the space back here so you don't say and it sounds really restrictive. So the center of gravity, the mouth posture, is the secret key. Okay. So is there a subtle schwa sound in between? Do not intentionally try to produce a schwa. Do not try to say like hen. That's going to sound weird. Okay. If I say it nice and cleanly, hen, and you don't hear any at all. Okay. Now, if I get a little lazy, I'm not speaking, as cleanly as clearly, and you can kind of start to hear a little bit of that come through, but it's not that I'm trying to put an there. What you're hearing is the mouth posture. This is just further proof of the mouth posture. Okay. It's also part of the reason why before n or m can become sort of. It's not actually an there's just a little bit of the center of gravity. And in fact, I think more often than not, it's actually the lazy plus a little bit of the sort of creeping through from the center of gravity very lazily, rather than being or plus combined. But regardless, as I've said before, that's not the way to pronounce before n or m. That's one way that can happen that natives do. But as so yeah. Anyway, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, as we say. Fun little idiom there, but you should get the point. So hopefully that starts to make sense, right? So David, a lot of your questions here, right, about the sound, the u sound, combination n, comes essentially down to mouth posture. That's the answer to that's the core answer to all three of those questions. Okay. Now, if you don't want to sound like a native or as close to a native as possible, the mouth posture will still help you reduce your accent. You can apply it to maybe certain key sounds to sound a little bit better. But if your goal is to sound as close to a native as possible, at this point, I'm convinced that it is either impossible or nearly impossible to do that without the right mouth posture. It doesn't work. Okay, Abdullah. Finally, right? This guy just won't shut up. He keeps talking about the same things, not getting to my question. All right. So does the sound change a bit when it holds? It sounds a bit more breathy to me. So like if I hold a sound, if I say like it doesn't necessarily change. Any change that you might hear would be sort of the natural syllable arc that we tend to put into things. So if I say like some, it, he, okay, because we tend to do that with the language. A word in isolation will have a pretty clear arc. And of course, that's just whether it's stressed or not, if it's just a word in isolation, it's just going to have a basic arc. But of course, in an actual sentence, that arc is constantly doing this as we go through the stress on stress rhythm of the language. So that's probably what you're mostly going to hear. Now, the breathiness, especially if a particular sound is held, I wouldn't say it's more breathy, but listen to this. Might be hard to hear. Okay. And you probably hear there's just a little tiny trail of breath. So it's like the word is sort of going, or the sound is it starts, it goes through its little arc, and then as it's sort of ending, the voice will stop before the breath stops. Now, what you're hearing there is the level of breath that American English uses. Okay. And it's one of the secret solutions to the flow of speech. Okay. This isn't the only solution, but I have a lot of students. I think we talked about this last time with that one guy that I think it was you that he's like an Arabic speaker teaching English. And I watched a video clip from him. Because of the way that languages are taught, or the way that they just tend to be learned, if you don't really know what you're doing, is it's very word-based. When language, your native language, my native language, all native languages, they're thought-based. Okay, you have a thought and it just comes out as a chunk. Okay, but when we learn a language, unfortunately, if you do it the ineffective, the inefficient, we'll say, not the best way, there's an emphasis on words. And so you'll say like, he doesn't like that. Now, you don't necessarily say he doesn't like that with clear spaces, but it's almost like there's these little micro spaces. Now, that could be for various reasons, but one of the reasons is because you don't have the right level of breath. Okay. Part of why English flows the way it does and everything sounds connected the way it does is because of the level of breath we have. See, if you just try to tune your ears as I'm speaking now, if you just try to tune your ears to the underlying level of breath that I'm using throughout my speech, you'll hear that it's actually, number one, you'll hear it a lot at the end of what I say. If you pay very close attention. Of course, it depends. Like if I end in an N, you're just going to hear it go through the nose. But you should kind of start to be able to notice. It's hard to hear with the voice, but especially on those voiceless sounds, you can kind of hear that breath is just like helping to link all the words, all the sounds together into one nice big flow, especially within thought chunks. Okay. It even affects the S, right? We don't just say s, 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 s. It's s, s. There's a little trail there. Okay. Now it's colored by the S. It's not just like it is at the end of a vowel, but you can sort of hear that little trail of breath on the S. So that's what I would describe as happening. It's that arc combined with the fact that we use more breath. And if you isolate and hold it, you're going to be able to notice that breath a lot more easily. So that's probably what's happening. Okay. Literally just talked about breath, increasing breath of first unit. Yeah. Nice. Very nice. Yeah, it's something that is very easy to overlook, very easy to forget about. Like when I'm working with people on mouth posture, it's just like, I keep forgetting breath. Like I have to remind myself, oh yeah, make sure their breath is good. Because the sound is like, yeah, it's good, but there's something off. And if like, hey, try the breath, there's like 75% chance that actually fixes the problem. So got to keep an eye on it. But there's so many pieces. Oh, is your jaw open enough? Is your breath flowing enough? Are you open enough back here? It's just so much to keep track of, and it takes practice. It takes getting used to. If you really want to get that like native sound, but the breath is also a good tool just to sound clearer. Like we just want to sound clearer. Getting the right level of breath is a nice little shortcut hack that will immediately make you sound clearer. Don't overdo it, because too much breath, when you start sounding breathy, you start speaking like this a bit and we can kind of hear it coming through too much. That actually makes you less understandable. So you want that sweet spot where it's like helps it flow, not too little, not too much. Anyway, moving on. Finn. Finally get to Finn's question here. Can you drop the tongue position for the N if it's between two vowels? Can I? I don't know. For example, the word minutes. Obviously still nasalizing the I before the N. Okay, can you drop the tongue position for the N? So basically like don't close into N if it's between two vowels. So if the N is between two vowels. Okay. Minutes. How many minutes? Minutes. How many minutes? Minutes. If you're speaking really, really quick and lazily, yes. Even if I'm speaking more quickly, you definitely need to nasalize the vowels for sure, at least the first vowel. But even if I'm speaking pretty quickly, my tongue at least wants to move in that direction, even if it doesn't completely close. I feel I have a natural inclination to kind of do that. And that maybe helps contribute to the illusion of the sound being there, even if I don't fully close in this particular case. But again, if you're speaking more slowly, more clearly, if you just try to nasalize and you say like, how many minutes? No, doesn't work. My recommendation for this particular point, don't even try it. You can do whatever you want. If you're speaking quickly and lazily, fine, go ahead and add it if you want. But just to keep things easy, I would not try to do that. You can still nasalize before if you want, but things get tricky in certain cases. Like I think probably if the N is at the end of a word, actually no, let me take that back. I don't know. It might depend on the exact word. English is complicated, right? But yes, it does exist if you're speaking quickly and lazily. We'll leave it at that. Remember, that's the natural range. If you slow down, if you're enunciating more, there's certain things that you can't do because the purpose is to sound clearer. Because I feel like the TDN, so this is based on continuing from the previous one, can always be dropped if they're not stressed. You can drop the T in thought it was good, the D in I need what works, and the N in it's in me. Well, that might be for different reasons. So the T at the end of a word, especially if there's not a vowel after it, but the T at the end of a word, it's just a super common thing to drop it. Like stopped, dropped, or flapped if it's a vowel. Those are the most common things that are going to happen. You can't always necessarily drop it, especially if there is a vowel. It's probably going to be flapped, like thought it. But if you're going from like T into W, because they would overlap anyway, it's super, super common to just drop it. That was, no problem. It's a very, very common combination. And the T will most likely just drop there because otherwise we'd stop it, but we're trying to overlap the W. So instead of saying it was or it was, see, it kind of stops the flow, just drop the T, right? So when we say need what works, same thing with the D and the W. Works. I need what works. Need what works. Fine. Now for in me, this is actually shifting, right? I think it's, what's the technical term? Co-articulation or something. I don't remember. I hate the technical terms. But this is shifting where we're going from a t-d-n to a p-b-m. Okay. So that's why the N can disappear there, because you're actually replacing it with an M. In faster speech, you can look at it as dropping the M. That's fine. But even if I say it's in me, it's in me, in me, I don't even have to enunciate that N. I could, but you don't have to necessarily. Okay. Of course, I'm forgetting timestamps again. I don't need to timestamp that particular thing, so I think we're fine. Though I guess you would call, continuing from the previous one, Finn just has a nice little thread going. Though I guess you would call the situations, yeah, see, there we go. See, I always do that, see, because I don't know what's next. Maybe it's not turning the N into an M. I think you just drop it. Yeah, again, it depends. If you're speaking quickly, you can actually just drop it. Another example of dropping the N is saying wanna, yeah. Yeah, when not enunciating, of course. Yeah, that's one that I mentioned in, I think the first time I ever mentioned partially nasalizing vowels. Remember, guys, this is partial nasalization. Don't say like one. Okay, especially if you're a Portuguese speaker or French speaker, not gonna sound good. Okay, it has to be partial nasalization, not full nasalization. But yeah, that's also a really common word combination. So that's probably another reason why that works. There's something special about the TDs and Ns in American English. If they're not stressed or beginning a word, they seem to always be able to be produced without raising the tongue. I don't know about that. You'd have to elaborate a bit on that. I'm not sure I've seen any textbook I've looked at ever really mention it. Yeah, that's because there's a bias. This is one of the things that I don't like about the traditional approach, and one of the points that I rail against other teachers with, which, everybody's going to teach how they want. They're, everybody has their own particular perspective and stuff. I'm focused on real speech, and I don't just mean like street language. Like, it's not going to be super informal and this and that. If you follow what I say, it's real language. It's just the way people generally tend to speak, regardless of situation. And then there's the prescribed way to speak, the prescribed sort of, this is how a native should sound based on one particular neutral accent, when there's general American refers to a range of neutral accents. So that in itself is already shot. But bring this up here from Fluent American. Go check out Fluent American's channel, by the way. I think he's doing some decent work over there. But yeah, I really, really, really hate that. I really hate that. Now, there are some things that even I'll say like, oh yeah, okay, this should be this way. So I get it. But at the same time, there's some points where there's a prescribed thing that, you know, certain teachers have, to put it nicely, I'll say they have a stick up their butt. And it's really, it's like an ego thing. Like, oh, this is proper English. This is how you should speak. And then there's real English. And there's other variations and things like, say, using the cot merger, or instead of doing e plus in the ing ending, you can do e plus It doesn't matter. Or if you're doing the R colored, like the ear, I actually didn't know that it was supposed to be e. I've always been pronouncing e, ear, but apparently the standard way that it's taught, based on what I've seen, is ear. So what I realized is, hey, as long as you say e or or anywhere in between those as you're blending into the it sounds great. Okay. Instead of this sort of one particular prescribed, like, this is how you have to do it. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. So this is another point. Some teachers, they'll say like, oh, you know, oh, there's no nasal vowels in English. And I thought that for a long time too, until I became more aware of actually how people speak. I'm always trying to be more aware, because I'm a native speaker. I'm unconscious to a lot of it, but I'm always trying to become more and more aware of how I speak, how other people speak, what sounds natural, what doesn't sound natural. And this is one point where I came to the conclusion, this is a super normal, common, natural thing. Do you have to do it? No. It shouldn't be full nasalization. You have to be careful with it, but it exists and it's common. So, you know, if nobody's talking about it, well, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you about it, because guess what? There's nothing wrong with it. And apparently that's one of the reasons why people like my channel. So here we are. That's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not that but yeah, so we have that's, so that's the TS illusion. There's no actual T there, but there's definitely an S there. And then we have that voice TH. So an S plus a voice TH, we can get sort of a weird thing. If you're speaking more slowly, more clearly, probably not. We're going to get some sort of TH, even if it's that dental T or D replacement. That's another point that a lot of people don't acknowledge or talk about. A lot of teachers, they say, oh, there's no dental T or D, even though they do it all the time. I can almost guarantee that almost any single teacher who denies the as a pronunciation for the voice TH, or the as a pronunciation for the voiceless TH, like saying that, not dat, that is informal, but saying that, a flatter T or D. Any teacher who denies that, I can almost guarantee you for a fact, if they're an American speaker, that they use it all the time in any situation. It's not a formality thing. You hear it on the news, you hear it everywhere, and most of us aren't even aware of it. That's the sad thing. That's the worst thing, is like when the teacher says, which I'm a bit guilty of that as well too. There's things that people have asked me where I'm like, no, and then I think about it more and I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, okay, I guess that does exist. That does work. But there's things like that. Like, once you become aware of it, if you still deny it and you're like, no, that's improper, that's bad English, it's like, I want to say the F word so bad, but it's just like, screw you, we'll just say that. Just like, get out of here, you know. Like, that's what I consider. I don't like saying this is kind of a borderline statement, but that's what I would consider to be like maybe not a bad teacher, but bad teaching. We'll say bad teaching. But yeah, you could do, if you're speaking quickly, you can change the TH into a Z here, because the influence of the S. So like, that's the thing. It's actually going to be more like a T. Then when you release, it's going to be like voiced into a Z. It's kind of a weird thing, but again, there's no actual T there. It's just sort of, it's being pushed through there. That's the thing. That's the thing. Anyway. I find for that's the thing, I normally would keep the tip of my tongue down for most of it myself. Okay, so keep the tip of my tongue down for most of it. So going back to like what Finn was saying before, I think, without raising the tongue. That's the thing. 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 Yeah, that's definitely possible for sure. I don't see any problem with that. To me, that feels a bit on like the lazier end. But absolutely nothing wrong with it. Now, if you were speaking more clearly, right, and a little clarification there, pressed against the bottom of my bottom front teeth. That's the thing. That's the thing. Yeah. There doesn't have to be a whole lot of movement. That's one thing that I'm going to be talking more about with the mouth posture is like, you actually don't have to move around too much with things. Like, I mean, obviously it depends on what you're doing, what you're saying, but it's dynamic. Fair, you lose the articulation. You compensate with flow, though. Exactly. So this is the reality of speech. I'm glad Fluent American and I are on the same page. This is why I talk about there being a range, right? Most teachers, they say like, this is how it is. But it's like, then you go and listen to real English and you're like, wait, I'm noticing something weird. And then you come to me, right? Or maybe to Fluent American and you're like, hey, I hear this. Is this happening or are my ears wrong? It's like, nope, that's what you're hearing. Then why didn't my teacher tell me that? Because they're teaching you a prescribed way that they think you should speak. Okay. Wendell's here. Hello, hello, welcome. Yes, welcome, Wendell. But to finish this point up here, yeah, when you're articulating, if you say that's the thing, if I try to sort of like keep it down here and, you know, keep it a little lazier, I say, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's like, maybe I'm kind of over exaggerating that a bit, but it just doesn't sound as good if I say, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing. Any native would be able to understand that. So, yeah. And unfortunately, it makes speech complicated, I know, because it's like, oh, if you're seeing clearly, it's probably going to come out this way. But if you're speaking quickly, it can come out this way. You don't necessarily have to do all of these things, especially in super fast speech. I actually recommend that you learn how to understand super fast speech and how things break, but you never have to reproduce it. Fast speech is fine, but not super fast speech. Just make your life easy and kind of don't worry about producing that. But there are many things that happen sort of within the normal range on the faster end that you might not expect. And that's where a lot of the linking rules are. But anyway, okay, Wendell. We got all the Wendell questions. So we had some Finn questions. We had some David Rock questions. And now we're on to Wendell questions. It was a very productive live stream. Are very and own synonymous in this context? And then Finn has an answer. Very leans more towards exact. Okay, so are very and own synonymous in this context or purpose? He did it in his very house. He did it in his own house. It's a good question. I know where this question's coming from. Yeah, I would agree with Finn here. Finn says very leans more toward exact. So when we say like this very day, we mean like this exact day. So it's a weird sort of less common use of very. That I think it was more popular in the past, like 1800s, maybe early 1900s. These days we don't, like, we'll use it as a form of emphasis sometimes, but it's not, I don't think it's used as often as it was before. So, but if you say he did it in his very house, we'd probably say this, but if it was like his very house, this kind of sounds weird to me because his, you're already giving the exact house. It's his house. And when you say very, you're really saying, you're not saying own, you're saying exact, right? Like his exact house. So it kind of sounds a little bit weird here. When you say he did it in his own house, you could actually add very and own together. You could say his very own house. And that would work, but very and own wouldn't be directly synonymous here. No, like that's not how very is used. The onion turned my eyes red, or the onion put my eyes red. Turned. Yeah. So Wendell, if I remember, you're a Spanish speaker. So maybe in Spanish, you might use poner. Yeah. Because I know poner can I think one of the uses of poner, I know it can mean like to get angry or whatever, like to get and then an emotion, which can also, we can say maybe turn, like he, I wouldn't say he turned angry, but has this type of idea like that where there's this change. Yeah, disconnect between the languages there. So the second one does not work, but the onion turned my eyes red is perfectly fine. Yeah. Is this confusing symbol? Kids, don't use the IPA. Don't worry about the IPA. Okay, for reasons like this. In words like oro, moro, more, for, and four, those are pronounced exactly the same. Floor, morphology, form, soar, pronounced like O plus sound. Okay. Gotta head out. So Fluent American is leaving. I'll come back here to you in a second, Wendell. Gotta head out. If you're still streaming in an hour-ish, I might be able to stop by if you're interested. Okay, there's a chance I probably will be streaming in an hour-ish, but it's gonna be towards the end of it for sure. But yeah, we'll be in touch. Maybe next week you can hop on. I'll try to stop by your stream next week as well, and we'll see. But yeah, see you when I see you. You too. All right, so the IPA. So we have this backwards C symbol. Okay, now that is the unmerged aw. Okay, we have a little bit of lip rounding. It's kind of up here a bit. Remember, I teach you the cot merger. So if the only reason, not if you want to sound neutral, if you want to sound better, if you want to know, the only reason to learn the unmerged ah and aw sound is if you like how they sound compared to just ah. Okay, the merger. That's the only reason. You won't sound more natural. You won't particularly sound more neutral. Okay. Because people who don't have the merger, that's supposed to be the neutral standard dialect. But if I'm paying close attention and I hear somebody say oral, instead of what I say oral, to me, they have an accent. They still sound generally overall neutral, but it's like, why is he saying it that way? That's kind of weird. Just like to that speaker who says oral, when they hear me say oral, that might stand out to them and they'll be like, why is he saying that way? He kind of has an accent, even though everything else he says is generally pretty neutral. Okay. That's why it's called General American. Okay. Not just American, General American. So when we're talking about the R colored vowels, if you don't have the cot merger and you have ah and aw instead, okay, this exists. If you like how that sounds and you want to pronounce it that way, have fun. Go ahead and do that. But to answer Wendell's question here, it's not O plus it's aw plus okay? R, which I'm probably exaggerating. I'm probably doing a little wrong because I naturally have the merger. But something like that, you know what I mean. However, if you do have the cot merger, if you're learning the cot merger to make your life simpler using the English hacks approach, then you just have ah, not ah or aw, but just this moves back here, this moves down here, the lip rounding goes away, ah, just one sound. Okay. What happens to the or? Well, notice how I'm saying that. Or. So I'm not saying R because R is a different R colored vowel. Okay. So if it's supposed to be R, that's ah plus the merged ah plus And if you have or, instead of saying or, Wendell would be correct. It's O plus Yes, it is O plus which is why I call it the R colored O. Make your life simple. Use the English hacks approach. Make your life simple. Okay. So there you go, Wendell. Perfectly fine. Do that. Yes. Do all natives do it? No. Do some natives do it, like myself? Yes. Does it sound perfectly fine? Yes. Okay. there's no problems with it. I heard someone saying powerful as powerful. Parful. Okay, I think I know what you mean. Parful, like that. And it got me thinking. That's sort of a really, really lazy way to like blend it together. But that, yeah. To me, that almost sounds kind of Irish, maybe. Powerful. Powerful. It's really powerful. I don't know. But yeah, maybe something like that could happen. I don't see a follow-up on that. So maybe you're not done with that thread, but back to Wendell. The first T sound in potato is a strong T in the middle of a word. Does the same happen with the P sound in typography? Okay, remember, so being honest, I could have done maybe a little bit better of a job when I made those initial lessons. Nothing in there is wrong. But I kind of emphasize like, okay, start of the word, middle of the word, end of the word. When that's important because the stress, the strong T, the strong P, the strong K, they're going to usually more often than not be found at the start of a word. And then the weak ones are going to be less common at the start. They're going to be more in the middle. That's true. What I also said, and what I should have emphasized instead, is that the thing that makes it a strong version is not where it is in the word. Okay, it's just a common pattern that the strong version is at the start of the word. Okay, what makes it the strong version is if it's at the start of a stressed syllable. Okay, those two are linked together. It's the stress of the syllable and the fact that a stop sound, a t, p, or k, is at the start of that stress that makes it strong. Okay, so when we say potato, that first P is a strong P. That first T in the middle of the word is also a strong T. Potato, 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 potato. Of course, the second one, being a weak T in between two vowels, is going to turn into a flap D. Not a flap T because that doesn't exist, a flapped D. Same thing with the P, okay? Is there stress? Topography. Topography, yes. No problem. Okay, so look for the stress. Look for the stress. Now, there is the case of secondary stress, which is important. I think I've come across a couple cases where the secondary stress doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be strong, but more often than not, based off what I've seen, as long as I'm not confusing things in my brain here, even with secondary stress, that will also make it strong. But because it's secondary, you have some more room there because it's the primary stress that matters the most, and you don't want the secondary stress to stand out as much or more than the primary stress. But that's usually not a concern. I need to mark a timestamp here. 1, 3. Before 103, we're doing a strong. Okay, good. Move it on. Blah. Oof. I wonder if I can, yeah, because I know people tend to hide it, but no, there's no need for that. Let's see. So towards. Now you can get that partial end of word devoiced, and you probably notice a little S there at the end. Starts in a Z. Towards. Can you say towards? Yeah. So sort of the fully more perfect, a way to say it is towards. Towards. So there's like an oo. I guess you could say there's W there. You can go all the way into a full W to, because it's war, like forward, backward, right? Upward, downward. In the case of to, you can say we don't say two words, that doesn't work. You might think it should be pronounced that way, but that one doesn't exist. It would either be towards, or because it sort of becomes like one thing almost, or you can actually really make it just one syllable and say towards with an or, towards. No problem. No problem. That's probably the most common way to say it. Yeah. Let me mark that as well. 105. That's a little short. I can make before 105 or I need an assistant to do this for me. But we're not making enough money yet. Not making enough money yet. I went ahead and threw up a website, even though I was going to wait to get the website until, like the channel was making enough to cover the website. But I found a really good deal and it wasn't too expensive. So I just paid out of pocket, out of my own money. Got to get it up because I'm going to be really doubling down, and I want to make this my full-time job. Like I'm still going to be teaching a bit, especially the mouth posture stuff, but I want to make this my full-time job as soon as possible. So I'm going to be really doubling down. You guys are going to see just like stuff from me all over the place. Hopefully I can keep that sustainable. But okay, interesting. Every speaker I've heard without the merger still pronounces or as in forest normally the way you do it. Wait, okay. Normally, okay. So I've heard without the merger still. So you're saying even if they don't have the merger, they'll still say like forest instead of forest. Which, yeah, okay. Even though they make the difference between stock and stock, not. Well, I've actually heard some speakers, like there's one particular speaker that I first noticed this from. There seems to be something kind of interesting going on with people who don't have the merger, or maybe who are from certain places. So this particular person, I can't think of his name right now. He's a politics YouTube channel, but I haven't watched him for a while. But I used to watch a lot of his content, and he said he's from New York. Now he generally sounds neutral, right? When we think New York, we think a New York accent, but there's actually like a lot of New York where people don't have a particular accent; they generally sound neutral. As I said, it's general American. There might be a little difference here or there, but it won't particularly stand out. And this was when I was becoming much more consciously aware of the fact that there is the cot merger. I didn't know that existed, until maybe 4 or 5 years ago at the most. And so listening to him, I actually noticed that sometimes when he says the word forest or something like that with that or in it, he'll actually go all the way into R. He'll say forest. I'm just like, what? Like, that is definitely not the word. But and it's not even consistent. It's not like he says it that way every time. I've heard him say forest. I've heard him say forest with like the aw or whatever it is. I think I've occasionally even heard him do the or as well. So range, you don't have to pay attention to every detail, right? There's going to be some sort of range, some things that are maybe changing in certain regions and this and that. And in this case, you say every speaker that you've heard without the merger still pronounces it as or. That could be indicative because we already know that over the last 40 or 50 years, the merger has slowly been becoming the standard. Like more and more native speakers of American English are just speaking that way. That's just how they learn to speak. And so eventually, my theory, maybe another 50 or 100 years or so, but the cot merger will become the standard pronunciation in American English, if it's not already. And I think this is further evidence of that maybe instead of the normal cot mersure without any special coloring from like the R, maybe there are speakers who still have that, but then when it comes to the R colored version, they're actually just fully into the merger and they're using the R colored O instead. And then because I heard this guy say "are" sometimes also, maybe there's this sort of weird thing going on where they're sort of like figuring out, should it, like, not consciously, this is all like, sort of a slow over time regional development, like maybe it's going to shift more towards O or because of the influence of the cot merger, or maybe it's going to shift more towards R. Who knows what's actually developing there. I'm not a linguist, but I think that's just more evidence for the merger taking over, and why it should be taught, especially because it just makes your life easier. Most, at least young speakers, because I talk to young people, don't seem to mess with the R-colored vowels. And they pronounce boy normally too, the way you do it. Oh yeah, instead of like oi, yeah, the oi, just like the or becomes or, the oi shifted into oi. So it's a R-colored, or it's a O plus e. Sounds like E, but it's e. What do you mean? I don't know what you mean when you say most don't seem to mess with the R-colored vowels. Like they don't even pronounce them. So like more of a British thing. Like instead of or R, they'll say like or, maybe. I don't know. Like, or they just make it an O. Like I don't know exactly what you mean there. Anyway, or do they just kind of say like or, whereas it's like the two words not blended? No, I mean no, by messing, I mean messing them up. Oh. Wait. Don't seem to. Okay, so when you say don't seem to mess with, what that means, at least what I understood that to mean, is they don't touch it. They don't bother with it. To mess with something means like you get involved with something, you deal with something. So you're saying by messing, I mean messing them up, as in making them weird. And you said don't. So you're saying most don't seem to make the R-colored vowels weird. Yeah, they don't touch it. They leave it. That doesn't. I think we have a slight miscommunication of what messing means. So then to mess up means to get it wrong. To mess with does not have anything to do with getting it wrong. These are two completely different meanings of uses of mess. Okay, mess up is mistake. Mess with is deal with or get involved with. Okay, so I think maybe we had a little misunderstanding there. But anyway, okay, whatever. That's fine. Moving on, going through the comments here. Okay, what's this cool new modern thing you're using? This is StreamYard, as it says right up here in the right-hand corner, because I have a free account right now, and it comes with a branding from StreamYard. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to allow me to do things like you see me, now you can see Finn and the comment and all this cool stuff. And I'm going to be able to share my screen with you guys finally, and all that stuff. So it's because, like, as I said, I want to do this full time as soon as possible. I got the website. I'm done screwing around. If I'm gonna stream, I'm gonna try to start moving into professional tools. Eventually, I will actually pay for StreamYard. Right now, I'm just kind of starting and getting it going. I'm just using the free version, so it's a little limited, but I can still use the basic features. And then once I get the paid version at some point in the future, which I'm not going to do this until I have an assistant, but I'm going to actually be multi-streaming. So you're going to see me on Facebook, you're going to see me on YouTube, you're going to see me all over the place. But I think by that time, because there's just going to be so many people like in the comments, probably, I'm just not going to be able to know what to do. Now, there's one interesting thing that I just thought of, though, because YouTube has super chats. Right now, if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm not on YouTube. I'm on StreamYard, and it's sending it to YouTube. So I don't know if super chats come through or if super chats are available if I'm streaming from an encoder. You can use your website for what? For streaming? But that's a thought that didn't occur to me. So I don't know. That's interesting. I'll have to look into that because I don't want to lose super chats. I mean, I don't get many of them anyway, but like that helps. So maybe, who knows? Maybe this is a one-time thing. Maybe I'll just use it if I need to. Like, I'm gonna maybe do some collabs with Fluent American. This will allow us to be on the same thing and whatever. I don't know, but it's definitely a tool that I will be using at least some of the time. Yes. See, I didn't even pick that up. See, he corrected himself. He wrote the wrong your. I didn't even pick it up. My brain just interpreted it correctly, making American children, not just American children, American adults. We do that all the time. I can't tell you how many times. Like, I mean, it's not like I do it constantly, but it's a fairly regular thing. If you're just typing, there are so many times where like I'm responding to a comment or I'm writing something, whatever it is, texting, and I'll spell R when I mean you are, and I'll spell apostrophe E when I meant you're possessive. It's a common thing that natives do all the time because they sound exactly the same. And our brains just like, we tend to interpret it correctly when we're reading, even if it's misspelled. But it's a common typo that we have. Yeah. Anyway, forest, like Josh, it doesn't matter. R or in common words is Eastern. Welcome, Ging. We got a I like how it adds the little YouTube supporter thing. I'm glad that they have support for that. So that's still good. It makes me wonder if the super chats will come through. I don't know if somebody wants to try to send a super chat just to test it, but yeah, it could be Eastern. It could also be a little bit with Central. The area between like the North Midlands going through the center of the country towards the south, you get sort of like a range of change there. They'll still generally sound kind of neutral through a lot of that, but the farther you head south, the more you start to get a little bit of more like an accent. Foreigner, orange, forest. Yeah, I would never say foreigner, orange, forest. Yeah, never say that. No, but okay, we did that. I sometimes say it that way too, but it's weird, and I don't know why I do that. I just try to say normal. Yeah, don't get them mixed up. Just like stick to one thing. Obviously, depending on your background, how you came up with like how you started learning English and this and that, you might have developed some bad habits and stuff, and kind of got to like work them out or whatever. But otherwise, just like stick to one thing. Stick to one. Like when you learn your pronunciation, don't like shadow somebody from here and shadow somebody from there. Like try to say like, okay, I want to sound like this. I like this neutral accent in General American. So like say me, for example, I'm going to shadow this guy instead of that other guy. I know that guy's from New York. I'm just not going to shadow him. So even if he still generally sounds neutral. Josh is a noob and got to get OBS. Yeah. Well, OBS was one option that I looked at. And I decided to go to StreamYard. They leave it as is. I don't know what that's referring to now. Oh, okay, yeah, that was the previous thing. It is indeed cool. Yes, I suppose so. Williams Sharon. Hi, what's this lesson about? So, sorry, it took me a second to get to you here, Williams. But Williams. I just kind of try to go in order. But yes, Abdullah is correct. It is a Q&A. Every week we are here just sort of hanging out, answering questions, preferably about English. Sometimes it gets onto some other topics, but pronunciation questions, grammar questions. A lot of my audience right now are for pronunciation because that's what I've made most of my content about so far. But any English questions you have, feel free to ask. Mess with phrasal verb of mess, informal, metal, or to interfere with what? We're missing spaces. I meant interfere. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's another meaning of mess with. Now let's go back to your original thing and see if that makes sense. Most don't seem to mess with the R-colored vowels. So what this sentence would mean, you're saying that most people don't interfere with the R-colored vowels. That just doesn't make sense. That means like they try to change the R-colored vowels, like in the language, not just like in their speech, but like the language itself. Like that's how it sounds. It doesn't make any sense here. Interesting. So context is important. Remember, context is important. Yeah. Though I do know mess with can also mean getting involved with something. Yeah. Yeah. So if context, right? If I say I can't run this software, like this other software, while I'm live streaming because it messes with my internet connection. Okay, that would be like it interferes with. But the sentence that you said and the context that you said it in, it doesn't make much sense to use that meaning of mess with. So I didn't even think of that. Yeah. Just learn OBS. No. What does the realm of things mean? It means the realm of things. Let's see. I always forget I have a drink because I'm just talking. What does the realm of things mean? It's a little bit of a fancy expression. Without a context, I can't answer this like concretely. If you give me like an example sentence or an example situation or something, but what it generally, so the realm of something, the easiest way to start getting the meaning of realm, if for those of you who don't know it, maybe Williams already knows, but think like a kingdom, right? Like the kingdom is like it's the realm of the king, right? Or the queen, if it's run by a queen, whatever. That's their lands, their territory, right? We say the realm, right? If you're reading a fantasy story, you might hear about like the human realm versus the demon realm, right? So where humans live and where demons live, and usually they're on different planes. It's fantasy stuff. Or something more actual in reality, we say like in the realm of reality. So I could say like, maybe I sit here, this is just a stupid example off the top of my head. Maybe I say, man, like, if I could fly, I would do this and that. And man, I really wish I could fly and blah, blah, blah. And you might say, yeah, okay, well, in the realm of reality, you can't fly. So why are you even thinking of that? Okay. You could easily just say in reality in that case, but in the realm of reality means like there's the realm, the territory of reality, what's real. And then there's the realm or land territory of imagination, right? What's not real. So the realm of things is already abstract. It's very general. So that's why I say without a context, I can't really answer this concretely. But yeah, Mr. Go Big or Go Home. Hey, Josh, welcome. Yes, I see Ging still has some things. I'm going to get to you in a second, Ging. But yes, Mr. Go Big or Go Home. I remember you commented on something, or no, I think it was last live stream somewhere. I remember your name. Came over from Fluent Americans channel, if I remember right. Good to have you. Let me know if you have questions. But we'll pick up where we were. Hear people talk that way. My vowels don't match that along. I guess I don't have to put up everything, but maybe it helps you guys follow what I'm talking about. Okay. Dr. Pepper, yeah. I was like, what are you talking about? No, it's not cherry flavored. I hate cherry flavored. I don't even drink soda that much anymore. This is actually the first Dr. Pepper I've had in a long time. Queen. What about Queen? And then a sad face. Because I said King. Queen. Oh, because, yeah. I'm really not in the news loop, but I did hear about that recently. I guess like the Queen died or something. That sucks. Yeah. So, yeah. A moment of silence for the Queen. Yeah. Let's see here. Laughing, elbow. It's 9/11, my birthday. That did not go the direction I expected it to. Yeah, anybody who was born before probably 90, I would say 1992 or so. I was born in 89. 9/11 is obviously a very special day. And like literally, like even if I just look at the clock and I see 9/11, like it's 9 o'clock and 11 minutes, that's where my brain goes. Because I remember the exact day. I remember watching it on the news. It was like we were in school and they had it on TV. Like we didn't even have classes. Like we were just in school as we're going from class to class. Like they just have it on the TV for like almost the whole day. And then eventually towards the end of the school day, they're like, okay, we've seen enough of this. And then got home from school, turned it on. I'm only 10. Like I don't even care about the news. I don't watch the news, but I knew it was like a big historical thing. I don't do anything particular. You know, I mean, like obviously you just from the association, you know, you sort of remember. So there's, you know, the whole never forget thing, you know. But as soon as you said it's 9/11 and then you said it's my birthday, I was just like, I thought this was going to take a different turn, but happy birthday. Yes. Very cool. Very cool. My birthday was actually 6 days ago. So our birthdays are pretty close. It's very nice. For real. As in my birthday. I'm sure that's what that refers to. Yes. I know, because you probably think it's the same thing. Like, is it really your birthday? Or is it a joke? It said Jing. Yeah, I know. You say that. Or call me something else. You're the one who keeps changing your name. So if you want me to call you something else, change it back to something else. I see a G and I want to pronounce G. Yes, the letter G can represent J, but when it's in this combination of spelling, an English speaker the pattern that an English speaker would probably pick up on is G, not J. So sorry if I accidentally pronounce G because that's just what my brain wants to do. Yes, 9/11 sucks, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The whole clean ordeal made me pretty sad. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's big news, big international news. I mean, it's also kind of like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be disrespectful in any way, but like, if say, I don't know, because obviously, like, okay, if like the Queen of England died or like the President of the United States died or something, like it would be a big deal. Like the people, you know, people of the world are like, oh, you know, this sucks. But if say, like, I don't know, the king or president or prime minister of, I don't know, Indonesia or, you know, some place like, you know, even Japan, maybe, like, sure, it'll probably make news, but it's not going to be like it is for like the Queen or for like the president. And to an extent that's understandable, but at the same time it's like they're, you know, they're in similar positions. It's like, why are you going to be more upset about one rather than the other? Unless you have a special connection, like, you know, maybe you have like family from the UK or in the English speaking world, obviously, like Britain sort of colonized, you know, a large part of the world, and so we have a cultural and historical connection back to the UK, even though most Americans probably don't really care that much. So yeah, it is what it is. It's unfortunate. It's sad, but yeah. I mean, she lived a long time, so I mean that's good, right? Labor Day, 9/11 birthday suck. I guess. I don't really care. She just seems so nice. I guess. What does shooketh? I'm pretty sure that's the way that Shakespeare said shook, or sorry, to shake. Maybe it changed. I don't know, but that's what I would link it to. When we add like "ith" to the end, that makes it sound Shakespearean or Elizabethan, because that was during Queen Elizabeth's time. Like, not this Queen Elizabeth, the other Queen Elizabeth. Pretty sure that's why it's called that. But anyway, yeah, Shakespeare during early modern English, right? We actually had two forms of you. We had you and thou or whatever. We had just like most European languages still do, and the way that verbs worked were different. So like we actually had different conjugations instead of just like I go, you go, he goes, we go, they go. There was actually like, I don't know if it was for every person, but I know that there was like thou doth protest or something, thou doth or thou doeth or something like that. I'm not an expert on that, but this sort of ith or uth ending. I don't know where you heard that. Maybe it was somebody trying to sound Shakespearean or something, but I don't think that's particularly a word in modern English. It would probably be to shake, like to shake something. Let me make an offensive name. Yeah, go ahead. I'll ban you. Banhammer. Why do you have a star next to you? That, I'm glad you asked. I'm sure somebody has already asked or has already answered this by this time. Yeah, memberships. Because I'm cool, but I actually suck and I'm a loser. That sounds about right. No, Ging and I have a special, Jing and I have a special relationship. I'm working with him on mouth posture and stuff. So, but yes, no, he has a little thingy next to his name because he is a YouTube member. If you want to support the channel, you don't have to, but little plug here. You can click the blue join button underneath this video and learn about. You won't immediately be charged. You can click the button, learn more. There's multiple options for as little as $2, I believe it is. A month, you can support the channel. There are different perks, different benefits that you can get at different levels. Jing is currently the only person at the highest level of $50, which I very much appreciate. Yeah, Jing's the baller. Yeah, he's going places. Okay, moving on. Blah blah blah. I don't trust the police to do the right thing in the realm of things. I mean, it sounds like it can work. It just sounds like you're talking about like there's no point in adding that. Like it sounds redundant because it's just so general. You're kind of just saying like I don't trust the police to do the right thing in general, like overall. Like that's what it sounds like to me. Maybe somebody else would interpret it differently, but I gotta not click on everything. Maybe it's because the queen was on the throne. The thorn. Yeah, she was on the thorn. Sorry, I know it's a typo. I'm not making fun of that, but it's just like it sounds funny in this context because, yeah, prickly. It's there's a subconscious connection to somebody with a prickly personality. On the throne for over 70 years. Yeah, that's another reason. I said she lived a long time. She was on the throne for a long time. So it is kind of a big thing that does contribute to it, for sure. So yeah, Ging, Jing, Jing, Ging, Jing, Ging, Ging, Jing. I want to say Guh. You're making my life hard. Go get a membership so you can get your own star too and support Josh at the same time. Yeah. There's two Queen Elizabeths. No, so I'm thinking back to I'm pretty sure it's called so Shakespeare, right? Long time ago, like 400, 500, 600 years ago. I don't even know the exact time, but it was a long time ago. It was hundreds of years ago. Okay. He spoke early modern English. So still classified as modern English, which is what I'm speaking now, but it was early modern English from the after the transition from Middle English, where a lot of things changed. And in early modern English, the language is recognizable, it's understandable, but not to my brain. I had a lot of trouble understanding Shakespeare in high school because my brain just doesn't work that way. Even though I'm very good at language, it's just I hate trying to read Shakespeare. My brain just hates it's so hard to make sense of. But anyway, that's not the point. That era, right? It's called, we call it like Shakespearean or Shakespeare speak, because everybody knows who Shakespeare is. But more technically, I'm pretty sure it's called Elizabethan English, because there was a Queen Elizabeth at that time. Maybe I'm wrong on my history there. I'm pretty sure that's why. I never actually looked it up. I just assume. That's what I heard. But so Elizabethan English would be Shakespeare's English, how Shakespeare spoke. So because this Queen Elizabeth that just passed, I don't think she was the first. Pretty sure there was one before. In fact, I think there was like a whole movie about the other Queen Elizabeth a few years ago. So yeah, so there's not two Queen Elizabeths now. No. I'm shooketh. That's Gen Z slang for I'm shocked or Smith. What? I mean something? That's a typo. Yeah, something. There we go. That's correction. I was like Smith. Maybe you're on your phone. Auto-corrected. Interesting. Okay, so see, I would have no idea because I'm not Gen Z. I'm a little old. 33. That's okay. 33 is young. I gotta say, I'm not enjoying the Gen Z slang though, because it's just like, why are you doing this? So apparently, Gen Z is like, hey, let's take some Shakespeare speech and repurpose it. We're gonna reclaim it, right? And that makes sense, right? As I said, shooketh. My brain goes to shake, right? One meaning of shake, like if you say I'm shaken. It's like a very strong way to say like I'm really shocked and probably like emotionally disturbed. It's a very strong word. So shocked isn't necessarily quite that extreme, but obviously it's quite similar. So instead of saying like I'm shocketh or something, like they took shooketh, which may or may not actually be a word from Shakespeare's time. I maybe it is. I assume it's the old way to say shake. But either way, they're taking what sounds like that and using it as slang for shocked. So it does make sense. It does make sense. Thou shalt not pass. Yes. Yeah, shall is another thing that we don't really tend to use much anymore either. Gen Z, am I right? Exactly. Yep. Now I know a decent section of my audience is from Gen Z, so no disrespect to Gen Z. I love you guys. It's just some of the things you do and say are from somebody who's just a little bit older from the previous generation. You started to give me some like old man vibes, where it's just like, yeah, I'm starting to feel a little old because I'm not on the leading edge, with the newest slang. So I kind of get confused and I don't know what's going on, and it just makes me feel like an old man. 20, okay. They also say shook, like I was literally so shook, like so shook. That's just kind of like Valley Girl speak that started with us, with millennials. People who are 15-ish, they use too many shortcut abbreviations that make no sense. Well, we started that. Right? LOL, internet speak, LMAO. If anyone's to blame for that, it's us, because and there's some abbreviations that like maybe they're even from my generation. I just don't know because I tend to be kind of oblivious to things. I'm not always up on the hip social trends, or whatever, even when I was a little younger. But yeah, they take it to like a new level. It's a thing though. As fast as it appeared. Could be. Queen Elizabeth from an alternate universe, I suppose. So what's the difference? I'll come back here. What's the difference between shooketh and shocked? Just because we're already on this thread. If you want to sound like a young person who's speaking in a very informal way, you shooketh. If you're not part of that generation, I recommend that you just ignore it completely. If you are part of the generation, I don't know. Choose to use it if you want. But it's slang. It's not standard English. It's like, as you can see, I'm a millennial, right? Which is just the previous generation, right? And I did not know that that was a thing, that's what it means and how it's being used. So most people that are, say, like, I would probably say everybody over the age of maybe 25 to 30, which is a large section of the population, would have no idea what you're saying if you use shooketh. So just use shocked. I'm shooketh. I like that one though. If I were Gen Z, I would definitely use that. That sounds like something I would use. Okay. I'm a box. What the heck's a box? Ain't a Gen Z either, loud and proud. I don't know, a box. Like, what? Yeah, our generation slang also sucked. Okay, Williams, can the infinitive function as a verb in a sentence? Can the infinitive function as a verb in a sentence? For example, like, I don't know if you have any examples. Always provide examples if you can, because like it makes my life easier. But so like if, yeah, I don't know specifically what you're asking. A verb is a verb. But like, I think maybe you're asking, like, can you use, like, if you say like to live is something, or like, are you talking about like I want to go? Like, I don't understand, because like a verb is a verb. Give me some examples. We'll drill into that. So what's the difference between, oh, I already did that. Do you know what feeling unmoored means? I can think of two slight variations on that. To be unmoored would mean either you feel detached, disconnected, in the sense of like detached or disconnected. But it could also have a slightly different sense that's very similar, like maybe like you don't have a foundation. Instead of just like feeling detached, like you kind of feel like you don't have a good footing, like you're kind of floating through life or floating through a situation or something like that. Because I'm pretty sure to moor is like to moor a ship, which would be like to, keep it in place essentially. So it doesn't float away. Yeah. So I was surprised some people didn't know. Yeah. So that's my understanding. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that's what that means. Not being Josh. 21. Very good. Well, you can officially drink in the United States. Good job. Wow. Yeah, you're definitely Gen Z. Pretty sure you're past that cutoff. Then, I mean, I don't know. I'll have to look up the exact cutoff. Because I was actually surprised at how early millennials start. Because we think millennials like, oh, 2000 is the millennium, but it actually goes back into like the 80s for the start of it. What year starts Gen Z? Okay. The mid to late 90s as the starting birth years, and the early 2010s as the ending birth years, which means there's already another generation. What? Wait, it says Generation Z are the children of Generation X. That's not right. This article is wrong. What? I'm so confused. Yeah, somebody messed that one up. But yeah, it looks like if this is accurate, which I don't know if I trust this anymore, 1997 to 2012. So if you're 21, 2001, yeah, so you'd be Gen Z. Generation Alpha. So we're starting back at A, I guess. What? I really feel old. Jeez. But yeah, millennials go 81 to 96. I was born in 89, so weird. I don't know. You're probably a Gen Z. We'll say that. You have a doctor more than you unmore them, and they ain't nobody. The channel's gone. What? I think you're drunk. Go home. What's the difference between charming and charismatic? Well, someone who's charismatic tends to be charming. Somebody who's charming tends to be charismatic. The exact definition between them, I think charming is a particular especially etymologically, I'm pretty sure they're like very, very closely tied. They probably have the same root. Go to the dictionary. Let me see if I can share my screen. Share. Let's try out some new things. Share screen. No, share screen. Okay. Charming. Does it show? It does show my whole thing. Okay. So not that any of this really matters too much, but keep that a little personal. All right. Charming, pleasing, delightful, a charming child. Okay. So this is a bit of a specific definition. You don't have to worry about that one, but pleasing or delightful. Okay. Charming, right? Kind of like which it's ultimately rooted in I think of it as rooted in like the second one where it's like magic. It's like you got charmed by a witch or something. It's like, oh, now you're like, you're in love with the witch or something like that. So you're pleasing, you're delightful. Now if we go to what was the other one? Charismatic. Type. Of or having characteristic of charisma. Okay, charisma. What? That is not, I don't know why that's number one because I've never heard it be used that way. Never heard it used in the context of a spiritual power. Maybe religiously, I guess, but not like spiritual power. I don't like this dictionary anymore. These definitions don't match my understanding of charisma at all. Like, what? The special virtue of an office function. Okay, so probably this one is the closest one. Spiritual power or personal quality that gives an individual influence or authority over large numbers of people. So influence, maybe not necessarily the authority, but influence. So if you're charismatic, right? I guess it's related to Christians. Interesting. So maybe there's a spiritual background to it that like is not even known by most people. Prone to popular appeal and widespread attention. Okay. So charismatic, if you're a charismatic person, you are going to be able to easily influence people. Okay. People are going to feel positively towards you. Okay. Through your body language, through the words that you use. Okay. And being charming is one way that you can be charismatic, because if you're charming, people will probably like you. Okay. So charming is more specific, right? It's like delightful. You're a delightful person. You're a charming person. You're pleasant to be around. Where charismatic is more like you're able to influence people in a for better or worse, because of the way that people see you positively, right? See some more from Fluent American. Just make sure I got to head out. Happy streaming. Be sure to like the stream to support. Yeah, thanks. Definitely, people like the stream. Like the stream. But yeah, see you later, Fluent American. If you're still here, probably left. That's okay. We'll meet up. Turning 18 is gonna feel so weird. Yeah, Finn's not even 18. Poor Finn. Poor Finn. He's so young. So young. I assume he. If you're not a he, I apologize. Finn isn't necessarily a masculine or feminine username, so I don't know. But for me, I was just like, as soon as I turn 18, I'm just like, I'm done. Like, I mean, I never really cared for drinking much in the first place, so I didn't care if I wasn't 21. It was just like, I'm 18. I can stay out as late as I want and do whatever I want, and that's pretty much what happened, because I'm a legal adult. But I was also a moron. Why? I don't need to air everybody's conversation here. 18 is when you turn into an adult. Yeah. I don't know. It's a whole different conversation. I study hard to get better grades. To get modify study. I like how like Williams is like actually asking English questions. Everybody else is just talking. Like, come on, guys. Where's the English? I study hard to get better grades. Does to get modify study. I don't know if this. I guess this is related to your previous question. So this would be an example, maybe. Williams. Can an infinitive function as a verb in a sentence? Does it modify study? I don't know if you have a particular meaning to modify in mind, but I would probably say no. I'm not. Interesting. I'm not sure how you're looking at it. One thing I will say though, so I don't have a whole lot of grammar content on the channel yet. There will be more grammar content in the future, but as you'll see, if you're at all familiar with my Logic of English Prepositions book and or partially completed course on YouTube, you'll know that my approach to grammar is very untraditional. And even if we're not talking about like, hacking the personality and like, learning the logic of stuff or whatever, 90% at least 90%, not 100%, but at least 90% of, we'll say at least 80%, the 80-20 rule, but I like 90. Say 90% of grammar rules, grammar terminology is absolutely completely useless. Okay. And the grammar is I definitely need a timestamp here. 159. Okay. So the way that grammar is usually looked at is like, oh, this is the language, and there's a lot of value. Like, you need to know what a noun is, you need to know what a verb is, right? Now at the end of the day, if you never learned any of that terminology, you could still learn the language, you can still slowly absorb the language over time, but that's not necessarily the most effective, efficient way. I think a little bit of grammar knowledge, a little bit of the right rules, especially the bigger rules like verb tenses, learning those things at the right time can have a big impact, help you learn more easily, because it helps your brain sort of categorize certain things and arrange things, right? So if you're learning, say if you're coming from Japanese, where it's a subject, object, verb language, so literally you would say, I to the beach go. And then you're learning English, which is a subject, verb, object language. So I go to the beach. Knowing what the subject, object, verb versus subject, verb, object, right? Knowing what that means, knowing what a noun is, knowing what a subject is, knowing what an object is, that really, really helps with just like the ground level foundation of understanding the way the language works compared to your native language. Okay. So some of that is super, super, super useful. But most grammar rules are useless. And I mean that in the sense that, number one, grammar is just a description, right? Everybody can just like people confuse sound and spelling, which is one of like the biggest sins in English teaching, in my opinion. It's messes so many things up for you guys, especially when learning English. Even if you're using IPA, that's still sort of a problem there. A symbol is not a sound. But in a same way, grammar is thought of as like, oh, this is the language. But grammar, like the grammar rules, when you study grammar rules, that's a description of how the language works. It's not the language itself. Number one, because the language slowly changes over time. So there's like never put a preposition at the end of a sentence. Nobody follows that anymore. Like nobody. Unless you are, you have a really big ego and you think you're better than everybody and you want to speak differently, like people did 200 years ago, then fine, you'll follow that rule and you'll never put a preposition at the end of a sentence. But for the 99.9% of the other native speakers that exist, we do that all the time. We don't follow that rule anymore, and yet it's still taught by some people. So that's just one little case there. But knowledge is not skill. Knowledge is not skill. I've said this many times before. I'll say it many times again. It's a very big message on my channel. Knowledge is not skill. Okay. You can have all the grammar. You could be able to know, okay, this modifies that, and this is that, and this is a dangling thing, and that's a inverted clause. I don't even know, whatever. Okay, who cares? Know all this stuff. All the terms. You could pass a C2 level grammar test, right? Perfect, 100% score. Let's say you even know 5,000 words. If you never practice listening and you never practice speaking, especially speaking, right? People assume, well, if I know the grammar and if I know the words, I'll be able to understand and use the language. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. You won't be able to have a basic conversation. Even having all that grammar knowledge, all you did was learn a description of the language. That's it. You intellectually know the description of the language. Where on the flip side, you could study no grammar, study no words, just listen to the language, pay attention to the language. Again, I don't think this is necessarily the most effective, efficient way, but you could completely ignore grammar and vocabulary as a deliberate study focus and just let the language teach you. And you will learn proper grammar. You will learn tons of words. You will learn how to speak like a native. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's possible, even as an adult. Okay. So when you take traditional classes, the way things are usually taught, it's easy to teach grammar knowledge. It's easy to teach words. We say this means this. This grammar is this grammar. And then you have that knowledge, but it's not easy to teach how to speak. It's not easy to teach how to listen. It's not easy to say, hey, this is how you interact with the language. What's easy is, here's a writing assignment. Here's a reading assignment. Here's, a multiple choice test on grammar. You can grade that. And language is taught backwards, usually. Anyway, I went off on that because the way that you look at things, it doesn't matter whether it's objectively accurate, if it's academically or intellectually accurate, right? I could say, okay, well, this is a dangling modifier, or this is an independent clause. And like sometimes that's useful. A lot of times, most of it is not. The point is that you want to look at grammar. You want to feel the grammar. Okay. Now, how do you do that? That's the big question. And I'm probably going to spend the next 5 to 10 years exploring that question more and more. But I already have a basic process. The logic of prepositions is the starting point. And I know that it works because the way that most people learn phrasal verbs, for example, or say the meanings of get, you'll go to the dictionary, you'll look up all these different meanings, you'll try to memorize them. Maybe if you're doing a little bit better than that, you'll actually try to like notice them in different contexts, maybe use them, work them into your speech instead of just memorizing them. Okay, whatever. And so you're trying to get better. Okay, that's fine. Like whether you know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing, you're doing what do you think is best. Okay, no problem. And there's nothing wrong with that either, because you do have to kind of practice and explore, and that's kind of part of the process. But at the same time, I know from experience teaching the logic of prepositions in the past when I was exploring the approach initially, that students started to naturally, spontaneously, automatically use phrasal verbs that they had never heard before, they had never seen before, they had never studied before. Now, sometimes the phrasal verb made sense according to the logic, but there's always the personality of the language. Sometimes, which it's an abstract thing, we don't have to get into that now, but sometimes it'll make sense, but it just or it might have a different meaning than what you might think it does, or it just doesn't exist as a standard phrasal verb. So sometimes, even though it technically worked, we would have to throw it out. But say probably 80% of the time, 90% of the time, learners were starting to use phrasal verbs that either do actually exist as standard phrasal verbs, or that don't exist as standard phrasal verbs, that they naturally were generating based on the context. They were feeling it and basing it on the context, which is what natives do all the time. We make up phrasal verbs all the time to suit a particular context. I don't want to say all the time, that maybe is a bit of an exaggeration, but we do that. And so that is a much better approach. You want to feel it so that you can naturally and spontaneously use it by building the subconscious network that a native has of associations between grammar parts and words and all this stuff, idioms. You don't want to study that stuff necessarily. You want to get it into you and feel it and build that network directly, hack into it, instead of just trying to memorize a bunch of dictionary meanings and grammar rules and all this stuff. The next big thing, which I was supposed to do earlier this year, and I kind of got caught up in other things and didn't happen, but I still do have the plan, the verb book, okay, using the same type of approach I did for the prepositions, but for verbs. And I already know essentially there's a little kink I have to work out. I have to go back and double check. But I pretty much already have the essence or the logic of get and why it's like the core idea underneath it and why it can be used in so many different cases. There's a reason. It's not random. It can't be random, because you think like, oh, well, they're natives and they get exposed to it and they naturally kind of say, okay, well, in this case it means that, in that case it's used this way, in this case it's used that way, and because they're a native, they kind of figure it out. No, language doesn't work that way. The words are always connected to something. No word exists in a vacuum. It's an evolution over time, right? And sometimes, slang and stuff or whatever, there's new meanings that come. Some of it fades, some of it stays. But there's a core underneath every single use of get, as a phrasal verb, not as a phrasal verb, replacing all these different verbs, right? To become, to receive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a core underneath all of that that explains every single case. They're all connected to one core idea. And that will be in the verb book. So you got to wait for that one. But yeah. So I guess here, I wouldn't say that to get modifies study. That doesn't make any sense to me. To like, what does that even mean? You say, I study. Well, I study hard. Okay. Why? To get better grades. Now, one thing you have to understand here is that this is in order to get better grades. We're just not saying in order. It's a common thing that English learners get confused by, because you don't have to usually say in order. It's implied by the context. So I study hard in order to, for the purpose of, right? What's the reason? So I can get better grades. So it's just two ideas. I study hard and the reason why I study hard, and you put them together. Okay. Now there's the logic of to that's working there. That's acting as a bridge. And it actually works very specifically in order to. Order means sort of arranging or aligning things. In makes order a container. So you're taking whatever it is. So you're doing something so that it is arranged in a particular container in order to and pointed to a particular action or outcome. That's what in order to means. You're arranging it, putting it into one container and pointing it at something. So obviously that's a purpose. Okay. Usually for is a purpose. To stole that from for, right? Usually for is a purpose, not to. To is an endpoint. A purpose can be an endpoint, which is why it can work with in order to, but that's a special application of the endpoint idea with to. If that doesn't make any sense, go start watching the course, read the book. It'll all make perfect sense. But all these things make sense. The short answer there, study to bridge, study, get better grades. Study, get. Study, get. It's a bridge connecting the two. I would say I want to go. I have a desire, want. That desire points to going. Okay, it's just a bridge. That's all it is. When it's working between two verbs like that. So even though we say I study hard, the to is actually connecting study. Now, study hard you can see as one idea. That's fine, but it's connecting the action of studying to the purpose of why you're studying, while saying in order to as one whole thing. So hopefully that makes sense. But if you approach grammar that way and you try to feel like, why does this work this way? Why is this arranged this way? What's going on under the surface rather than just what I see on the surface? If you start thinking about grammar that way, then it's going to help you a lot. Okay, we're talking about age again. Okay. Anyway, did Super Holly's channel. Nieces are teaching her some hip Gen Z slang expressions. Okay, I guess. Whatever. So outlandish, yeah. It's like a millennial teaching her their kids to tell somebody they're fly. Yeah, I guess. Fly actually, fly would be a Gen X thing. That would be my parents' generation. That I'm pretty sure fly comes from the 70s. So not quite, I guess. Wait, maybe does that millennial teaching their kid? That would be backwards. But whatever. Don't forget to close tabs. Yeah. Speaking of tabs, actually, I don't know if I want to reveal this. I think I'll give you guys a sneak peek of the insanity that I'm about to go through over the next however many months. See if I can catch up here really quick, though. You guys on voice, you guys can voice chat. Who, where, what? Okay, blah, 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 blah. Crime Family. Oh, that's where the crime came from. Okay. Crime Family coming up soon. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to corrupt the youth. I just follow orders. Okay. TR something or other. All this mouth posture stuff. It almost feels like it would have been so much easier to get it right if I were to be an opera singer. Well, possibly, yeah. I mean, people with a singing background do seem to have a better time of things. I know Rachel's English has a music background, and that's probably part of why she talks about the speaking from the chest thing. I think I'm convinced at this point that speaking from the chest accidentally does what you need it to do here. But like, I don't speak from the chest, so it's sort of like a hack without control, where I would prefer to give you a hack with control. So if you just actually open and control this, you don't have to try to speak from down. Because most people are like, how do I speak from the chest? And then they try and they end up like too breathy and this and that. And it's like, I don't, if it works for people, fine. But at the end of the day, as long as you get the result. But she has a singing background, and I'm pretty sure that's sort of where that idea came from for her. I also know Gabriel Weiner, who's a polyglot, which I actually have an affiliate link in the description to some English books that I recommend for you guys, some written by me, some written by others. And his book, Gabriel Weiner's book, Fluent Forever, which I should probably bring this up if I'm talking about this, is a book that I bought myself. I read quite a few years ago, maybe like 6, 7 years ago, I think. A lot of really great ideas. I actually referenced some of his ideas in my own book, How to Learn a Language. Especially his methods for learning vocabulary and like adjectives, nouns, verbs, and stuff like that. It's genius. But he has an opera singing background. Like, he's actually an opera singer specifically. I don't know what he does now, if he still does that, but he'd have to like sing in German and Spanish and this and that, whatever. And he does talk about pronunciation, and he talks a lot about ear training and stuff, which is one reason I like him. But he has that background too. So I don't think he talks specifically about mouth posture, because I stumbled upon that myself. I started calling what I discovered mouth posture as like an initial idea. I was like, I'm going to call this mouth posture, because everybody's using like placement. And I'm like, I don't like that idea of placement, because like, you shouldn't try to like place your voice somewhere. I don't think that's what you should be doing. It doesn't make any sense to me. And there's so many things that can go wrong with that. So I started calling it mouth posture. And then as I was doing more research on it, I actually found out that that's a term that does already exist to refer to the thing that I discovered myself. And I'm like, oh, I'm on the right track. So I'm not the only person to talk about it, but it does seem to be something that not many people talk about very often, even though it's literally the secret, like, silver bullet to developing a native accent. That actually might be why it's not talked about much, because people want to sell you a bunch of crap usually. Why give you something that works when they can, when you can keep paying them, I guess. But regardless, yeah, if you have some sort of singing background, especially opera singing, the mouth posture stuff probably would be easier, because you'd already be familiar with like manipulating, especially in the throat, but manipulating certain things. And then as you go through phase 0, you'd probably be able to get through phase 0 very, very quickly, because you already have a lot of basic control and stuff. Where the average person, I designed phase 0 for the average person who has like no feeling of their vocal tract. Like, they just speak their native language. And then they try to produce sounds in English, but they're not particularly aware of what they're doing. So phase 0 helps give you that. But if you have a singing background, you already have some familiarity with it, right? So it's kind of you already have that benefit. Okay, they can be used interchangeably. I'm also asking, well, yes, Mr. Go Big or Go Home, yes. But we were also talking about your birthday. Not that we can't get off track. Okay, they can be used interchangeably. I don't know what this is referring to at this point now. I kind of got lost in all the chaos. But there's a video where you very clearly say Viking with the writer vowel thing. I don't know what you mean. Because writer and writer are pronounced the same. It's just I. Like, I don't see why would it be different. It's just the I vowel. I'm really confused. So apparently I'm not aware of something. You're gonna have to further clarify, explain, because as I've talked about before, I think Finn, I think you were the first person to ask about that. Where apparently some natives, I didn't know before this, pronounce writer and writer differently. And I was saying they pronounce this, they're pronounced the same. Are you talking about the Enhack? Well, that doesn't make any sense because that has nothing to do with writer and writer. That's why I'm confused. Like the only thing that's shared between Viking and writer is the I. So, and it's just the I vowel. So I don't get it. Clarify if you can. Maybe I'm just not picking up on something. Anyway, does it mean that it gives more information about the word study? Okay, so going back to I study hard. So that's what you mean by like, does it modify it? Well, to get itself wouldn't really mean anything, but like to get a better grade as an idea, you could say, okay, yeah, that gives more information about study, but and there's maybe use in looking at it that way. I guess my brain maybe doesn't work that way. It makes sense. You could, I guess you could look at it that way. Yeah, that's fine. Because I mean, what you're saying, remember, it's in order to. So you study, and then you're saying why you study. So of course, the reason why you study helps to give more information about studying. That only makes sense. So yeah, you're not wrong. But when we say like, does it modify it? Like that's where it's kind of like there's multiple ways to look at that, like in like a grammatical sense, in like maybe providing more information sense. So yeah, I don't know, whatever. Can you pronounce? Oh, welcome, Alan. Can you pronounce the word smoothed like that? Smoothed. Okay. However, how would I normally say this? So let's see here. Smoothed. Smoothed. So what's probably going to happen here, we have a voice TH and then we have a D because the E is silent, right? And we have the dental D variation of the voice TH. So the easiest way to pronounce this, fully enunciated, you'll say the d, smoothed. But the easiest way to say it is to just make that D a little bit flatter, maybe touch the teeth a bit, and then just stop that D at the end. Smooth. Maybe you can still push out that little D. Smoothed. Just like push out a little dental D. That makes it easier to speak. Now, if I say I smoothed it out, I smoothed it. Now I'm completely dropping the TH. I'm not even doing a dental D. I'm just doing a regular D and linking it to it. I smoothed it out. Except, this is actually special. Normally it would flap, but because I'm dropping the TH, I'm actually not flapping. If I try to drop the TH and flap the D, smoothed it. I smoothed it. Now it sounds like it's a completely different word that doesn't exist. But if I keep it as a regular weak D, this is a really special combination case that I wasn't even aware of. Then you can drop that TH and just do a regular D as long as you don't flap it. Smoothed it. I smoothed it out. Again, if you're speaking more slowly, it's not going to work. There's a range, but if you're speaking, normal, faster end of normal, or super fast, then it would work just fine. I don't know at this point. I know, right? And then just flatline. Abdullah has died. He has passed on to the great beyond. Okay, so I caught up. Now, the thing that I can show you guys, which I'm probably going to have to go pretty soon, but I can show you why I'm going to be working my face off. Can I say bad thoughts as... I assume what you're doing there is lengthening the ah. Is that why you put ah and ah twice? Oh my god. Hold on. Still on my live stream.
Okay, well, I'm staying overnight tonight. I'll be home tomorrow at 6.
Okay.
Thank you. Love you.
Every time. Okay. It's kind of longer or lazy D. Okay, so we don't lengthen vowels. The only time that you're going to lengthen, by that I don't mean we don't say we don't do ah and ah as one long ah, right? Lengthen, obviously, if something is stressed, it's going to be louder and longer. If it's unstressed, it's going to be shorter and quieter. That's relative. But I'm talking about in an absolute, doing two ahs together as one long ah. We don't do that in English. Okay. Can you hold out the sound? Yeah. If you have a reason to. If it's, say, really, really bad, instead of saying that's a really, really bad thought, you can say that's a bad thought. That's just one ah that's really long. Now, can you say that's a bad thought? We do maybe sometimes do things like that. I wouldn't recommend it. I would just ignore it. That's maybe a way that we can play with the language as a form of emphasis, sort of, but I wouldn't say it's a standard thing to do. So no. Now, as far as the D part goes, the most common, easiest way to say this is to just, instead of saying bad thoughts, right? I don't think anybody would say bad thoughts, no. But you can say bad thoughts. So you do a held dental D. Although if you're speaking normally, we probably wouldn't even hold it. We just go into the dental D, but bad thoughts. So yeah, it wouldn't be held in normal speech. Bad thoughts. And so you release that dental T for the TH. It's a common way to link the T's and D's into the TH. So notice there that you're also not actually dropping the D, because then you would just go straight into a dental T, because the TH in thoughts is voiceless. But if you do that, it doesn't sound right. If you say bad thoughts. Well, I guess that does work. Bad thoughts. Yeah, there's such a small difference. See, I wouldn't even consciously think to do it that way, but there's such a small difference that I guess it doesn't matter. It'd be fine. But only if you do that, the dental version, dental T or dental D. Anyway, so I'm gonna share with you guys. Let me make sure all of this is shareable. I think so. That all seems fine. Okay. So, kind of similar concept of TS hack, I suppose. Yeah, kind of maybe. Although I wouldn't really call the TS hack a hack. It's it's not that you're choosing not to say the T. It's that the T is an illusion. There's no hack there. It's just a factual statement. But anyway, let me share my screen here again because I have fancy tools to play with. This looks really, really messy and everything, and that's partially because this is multiple weeks. I sort of reset everything to this week starting today. You don't have to worry about what all this means, but basically this line is the main content. Okay, so we have the live stream, and this is subject to change. I'm just kind of showing you guys what I've prepared and what I'm up to moving into the future, and we'll see how well it works. But live stream, we have the range concepts essential video coming up, top 5 things you were taught wrong about English video, and then the Ask English Hack show. What I'm going to start doing with the questions that you guys send in is I'm still going to have like the clips and stuff, because I'm going to cut it up into clips. But instead of just having like the clips that I've been posting, I'm going to make it into like a show where it's like I answer a bunch of questions, and then throughout the next week, I'm going to cut them into clips to the micro to post on YouTube Shorts if applicable, or to post on like TikTok or whatever. And then we also have like some extra practice lessons or some minimal pair lessons. Twitter, go follow me on Twitter. You can ask questions there as well. That's just a tentative idea I got from somebody that's probably not going to do anything right now, but basically making content based off of how successful certain tweets are. Anyway, all of this stuff is clips. Right, so there's like question clips based off the Ask English Hack show. There's Twitter clips based off of tweets that do good if they're like shorter. Main clips, so like there's a main lesson 2, main lesson 1. So 1 or 2 clips from the main lesson content for the week to help put into shorts content. And then of course live stream clips I'm going to take from the live stream. So repurposing of content. And that's some of it's going to go on YouTube, or that might go on YouTube, might go on Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Then we have the tweets. I'm going to be trying to tweet, regularly. And some of it will probably be cross-posted on YouTube and stuff, because I can kind of do the same thing with the community tab. But I'm probably going to, maybe not have everything in all the places, so that it's not like the same thing everywhere. But I'm going to be posting like some thoughts and stuff there as well, and whatever. And then this is only 2 for today, but pictures, so like from clips or other, I'm going to try to do like 4 a day. And that's just like either like there's certain pictures that I take, or maybe it's like a screenshot from a video or a short that has like the text over it, and like that's just like a standalone picture that can go on Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like repurposing content that way. The blog is going to be a pain, but I'm going to start doing it myself until I get an assistant, where it's like there's the main lesson for the week, blog post version. Second main lesson of the week, blog post version. So that's going to be on the website and on medium.com. Then this isn't here for this week because I'm just restarting this week, but normally there's going to be the weekly recap podcast episode. So you can follow me on any podcast platform, and you should find the English Hacks podcast. There should be a link, I think, in the description to, maybe not, on my website for sure. There's all the links you need, but that's the weekly recap, kind of like taking the big things throughout the week and putting it into one big thing, so that if you're just listening to me and not watching me, you can kind of get like the general idea of what we did for that week and some important things that happened, or whatever content was made. And then there's the podcast version, so just extracting the audio from the Ask English Hack show, making it into a podcast. So there's gonna be 2 weekly podcast episodes, and then that just kind of repeats each week. So in total, Snapchat is a big question mark. I'm probably not going to be on Snapchat. I'm just an idea. LinkedIn is also a possibility. I know I should be there, but I'll be on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I think there's maybe something missing here, but yeah, the Medium website, Anchor, also those are the other platforms. And then here, so I'm going to be basically trying to make 100 pieces of content. That's just counting the main content, even like the repurposed stuff, right? But only on one platform. So like, say if I put all of this on YouTube, that would just be one platform, right? So it's 100 pieces of content a week. If you count cross posting, so say I take the range concepts lesson, I post it on YouTube and Facebook, that counts as 2, right? Instead of just 1. And so if you count cross posting, estimate of it would be 169 pieces of content a week, which would be 676 per month. And I'm also probably going to be coming up with a newsletter pretty soon. So that is the plan. And we'll see how it goes. But as I said, I'm getting pretty serious about English hacks as a business. And just like especially the YouTube channel. I want to do this full time, and I want to get there as soon as possible. So probably between now and the end of the year, if I can manage to sustain it, which some people are going to be like, you're crazy, you're going to burn out. That's fine. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work my face off to get there. Because we still have not hit $100 a month on YouTube, which is insane. It's at it was around 80, and now it's for the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's just been like 95, 90 to 95, and it's just it won't hit 100. It's just so frustrating because I'm just trying to make so much content for you guys. This last week, obviously, I haven't been making as much, but so frustrating. But anyway, I think I got it's a held dental D to a normal TH. Bad thoughts. That just seems almost physically impossible to say. And why would you even do that? No native would do that, I don't think. Bad, especially if you try to release the dental D, bad thoughts. Now it just sounds like you're replacing a regular D with a dental D, and that doesn't work in English. You can't replace a regular D with a dental D. The only time that you can technically do that is if it's linking to the TH. And in order to link, you can't produce the TH separately. It has to be bad thoughts. So it gets released from that dental position. Otherwise, it's not linked. Josh, what does it's just a statistical inevitability mean? Something that, statistical, right? Statistics is how likely or unlikely something is, or, what's the data of something? How does the data fall? These people are over here, these people are over here. Okay, whatever. So you say 50% of people are stupid. I don't know, whatever. That's a statistic. Okay, this is a mathematical information about something. Okay, inevitability, something that is inevitable, something that is avoidable, right? In Spanish, evitable. Okay, avoidable doesn't look quite the same, but it's to avoid. If it's inevitable, it's unavoidable. Okay, those are pretty much the same thing. So you can't avoid it. Okay, so inevitability is the noun form of inevitable, which is the adjective. So an inevitability means something that cannot be avoided. Okay. So let's say, again, stupid random example off the top of my head, there's a train going down the tracks are going to end, but the train is going too fast to stop before the end of the tracks. And so you could say, well, it's physically impossible to slow the train down fast enough, so it is an inevitability that the train is going to go off the cliff. Okay. So a statistical inevitability means that due to the statistical data, right? Statistics show that this thing is so likely. Say if it's 100%, right? So say if I would, maybe this is a stupid example again, but if I take this can and I let it go, there's no chance that it's just going to stay there, right? It's going to fall. So you could say that is a statistical 100% chance, there's a statistical inevitability that the can will fall if I drop it. Okay. Now, does it have to be 100%? I mean, if it's inevitable, it might have to be 100%, or depending on how you're looking at things, maybe it's there's a 0% chance. That could also be unavoidable for it being possible instead of impossible. But maybe it's 99%, right? So we're saying, well, it's not inevitable, as a solid fact, but statistically, there's a 99% chance that this is going to happen. So then you can call it a statistical inevitability because it's almost guaranteed to happen, but it's not a complete inevitability, right? So we're talking about based on the data, not necessarily based on what's actually possible. That's how I would look at that statistics thing, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Well, the chat has kind of died, guys, and it's already past 2 here. We've been going for 11, 12, 13, 1, for like going on 3 hours, just about. Yeah, please don't. So I think we're going to end here. Mind about statistical notability. Okay, yeah, just let's let's just not. Not if it's going to skirt any lines. Yeah, definitely don't say that. He sent me a Skype message. Okay, so moving on. What was I going to say? Yeah. So if you guys have any other questions, you come back next week. If you want to comment on my crazy plan that I'm going to work my face off on, feel free to leave that in the comments as well. Of course, feel free to ask questions throughout the week on whatever videos you want. There's the Ask English Hacks show that's going to happen. You can also, again, follow me on Twitter and all that stuff. Interact with me there. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the places. And yeah, hope you guys have a good week. Be a leak guy. Like, what would I? Okay. So I'll see you guys next week. How do I end this now? I got to figure that out. Oh, I'm still sharing my screen. What? Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Do you guys still see? Oh, it's because I clicked the button not to add it to the screen, so you guys don't see it. Got it. That makes sense. Got to get used to this tool. Okay. I will now leave the studio. Apparently that didn't end the stream. And I love how 3 of you are still here. How do I end the stream? Oh, end broadcast. There's a button for that. Why does it give me an option to leave the studio if that doesn't end the stream? Like, shouldn't those both happen? That's why you get OBS. No. While I'm here. Ooh, banners. Okay, brand. Yeah, I definitely have to play around with some stuff here. Private chat. Chat with everyone in the studio. What? Oh, I guess that's okay. That's local for the StreamYard. Okay, good. Anyway, see you guys next time.